Welcome to the Borgen Podcast, the only English language podcast about fictional Danish politics. On our show, we explore the people, events, and parties that make up the fictional Danish parliament on Borgen. I'm one of your hosts, Amy, coming to you from Istanbul, Turkey. And I am, as always, joined by my good friend and co-host Chantal, who broadcasts from her room with a fabulous view in Toronto, Canada. And today we are doing a bonus episode. So our conversational style will be a little freestyling action going on. We are going to talk about articles and interviews with the creators and actors and various personalities involved in the making of this show. And actually, to be totally frank, Chantal did most of the heavy lifting on this episode. So I'm here, like the listener, just to hang out and have a conversation. And so let's get started.
All right.
Hi, Chantal.
Hi, Amy. How are you doing?
Pretty good. It's a warm May evening here. It is Saturday evening. I am looking outside my balcony and sometimes I can see bats. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. So it's 1:00 p.m. here in Toronto, Canada. Hello, everyone. So welcome to this bonus episode. This is the first bonus episode of season 3. And we thought it really important that we reflect on the articles and interviews that happened 10 years ago when the show was airing, and there was press coverage about it in English, because as you know, Amy and I are Canadians, and we record this show from, as Amy said in the intro, she records from Istanbul, Turkey, and I record from Toronto, Canada. So what we've done is we've kind of just selected interviews that are available on YouTube, so anybody can access these interviews. And what we're going to do is we're going to put all the links in the show notes. So if you're interested in watching these interviews in full, you can feel free to do so. So with that, I'll start the first one. So this was a YouTube interview I found from from Dublin University, and it's with Camilla Hammerich, who did an interview there. And Amy, do you want to talk about her title? And
yeah, I mean, as far as I know, she is a producer, basically, and she produced Borgen. She's the major producer of Borgen. I don't believe she acted in it, but she definitely produced it.
No, I don't. In looking her up myself,
she didn't find her in the credits.
Acting, yeah, she's mainly like a key, very powerful figure of production and behind the scenes. So in her interview, so she said that she studied law, but she found it boring. By the way, this interview is from 2014, so roughly about 10 years ago. So she studied law and found it boring. And she's had a long career as a producer in TV drama. She's the former head of drama at TV2 and a producer at DR, and so much more. And Amy and I kind of quickly looked this up. And she talks about how Borgen is centered around the political storylines, but also there's a big storyline about press and the private life of these people, as we know. And she was saying that they purposely chose to have the directors approximately a 50-50 split or 60-40 split between men and women directors to kind of offer a bit of a balance to the tone and feel of these episodes that were being directed. Just some trivia for you. She talked about the opening of season 2, which was, as we know, Brigitte in Afghanistan. And she said that it was actually shot in Copenhagen, not far from the studio, in a field, and that they had made friends with the military, and they got the right uniforms, and they used CGI, which I thought was very cool, because to me as a viewer, like I couldn't tell, like I wouldn't know it's some field in Copenhagen. It looked very real,
Yeah. I mean, I've never seen Afghanistan, obviously, but yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, and of course they were in a base, right? Like the setting's at a military base. There's no distinctive like Afghani landmarks around or anything. So it's not like, it's not like World War II epic where they're at the L'Arc de Triomphe in Paris or something. So you can kind of like fake it, because most people don't. Yeah, most people don't travel to Afghanistan right now. So plenty of people come out of Afghanistan. I've met
Yes.
many Afghanis.
People come out of Afghanistan. But then I was very curious to know, like, some of our favorite episodes in season 2 were episodes 7 and 8, when they went to Karun, which is a fictional country, when they went to North Karun and South Karun. And so I was curious where they shot that, but she didn't go into that. And so the Christiansborg is where the parliament is, and Borgen is the nickname of Christiansborg, and it means castle. And she said that they used the exterior of the real life Christiansborg, but all the interiors of the show were all constructed sets. She talked about the casting of Brigitte Newborg, and the question from someone was she the obvious choice for the role? And she said that they had auditioned most of the female actresses in Denmark between the ages of 35 and 48, maybe 30 actresses in total, and how Cici Babett Knudsen came from comedy, and she did not have a lot of experience in TV. So Camilla Hammerich describes her audition as she's hard and vulnerable at the same time. So I thought that was very cool that, Cici Babett Knudsen comes from this comedy background, which you can't, there are some moments of comedy scattered throughout the series, but it's not a comedy at all. But I think it's really neat how she came from this type of background, but how she could just turn so nicely into a more serious role. Right.
Yeah, it shows the quality of her as an actress, actually. And I'm surprised there's only 30 actresses that age in Denmark. But Denmark's not very big in Copenhagen. That's kind of interesting. I am currently, if you can hear weird noises, I'm currently struggling with my cat, who climbed up on my lap and almost knocked a lamp over and is being a real pain. So if you hear weirdness, it's her. My apologies.
So the character of Katrine and Casper, she said they were cast together at the same time, which I think is really interesting and a good idea, because those characters have to have a lot of chemistry together. Not just on their day jobs, but also because we know they had a relationship together.
Yeah, and their relationship predates the action of the series, actually.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So when we first meet Katrine and Casper in season 1, they are already broken up, but we know it comes out that they've had this relationship, that they've been off again, on again. Yeah. It seemed always to me like it was quite epic. And obviously it is, because like they can't quit each other. They're still back and forth pretty much all the way through, even up to season 3. So that's a pretty important casting, actually.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The and arguably that is way more important than the character of Philip. Across from Brigitte, because the Casper Katrine combo has to be, as you say, it has to be believable that they were in a long, complicated relationship, or had this long standing friendship way before season 1 ever started.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the chemistry with Philip and Brigitte is also important, of course.
It is also important, but I don't feel that there is I don't, like, in terms of airtime, right? There's more airtime between them than Casper and Katrine. So The Killing is also a very big show that came out of Denmark in 2007. And actually, for me in North America, Amy, we were talking about this offline about where could we find The Killing, how could we access it? Because, distribution in North America is not always the same as in the European countries. And I actually, for listeners in North America who are interested in watching The Killing, I found that it is available through Apple TV. Not as an Apple TV show, obviously, but it is through IFC. They have access through IFC, which plays through, you can access it through Apple TV. So I plan on watching The Killing soon. And maybe if we have time, maybe we would do a chat about The Killing versus Borgen if we feel it's relevant. And then the other thing, just a side comment, Amy, you know, the American TV show that just came out, The Diplomat.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were planning on watching it, but I've been reading online that there's a lot of parallel between, I wouldn't, maybe not parallel, but I guess comparison about a strong female woman in politics in The Diplomat, as you know, we have in our show here, Borgen.
Yeah, I mean, and like, you know, not to diss our friends to the South, as we say in Canada, but like American TV producers do have a tendency to like latch onto, you know, creative ideas and show structures and ideas for certain successful TV shows from Europe, and then kind of Americanize them and make them their own. Like they did that with Shameless, The Office,
Yeah.
a bunch of other, pardon?
Queer as Folk.
Queer as Folk, yeah, I mean that's a Canadian show, right? Isn't Queer as Folk Canadian?
No, Queer as Folk was a British show for years, and then starting in 2000, they started filming it here in Toronto. They made an American version of Queer as Folk, and the characters, they have different names in the American version. It's supposed to be set in Pittsburgh, but then they did the show over basically and just changed the location. So it was supposed to be set in Pittsburgh, but they actually shot the whole thing in Toronto. And I used to see them filming actually when I was in the Gay Village.
Yeah, of course.
They used for one of a few of the places that they shot at and hung out at was Woody's, which is a bar on Church Street, and Fly Nightclub, which is a gay nightclub that I used to go to back in the day. That's the club where they filmed all the characters' club scenes. So I thought it was really cool. But yeah, that's another show that was stolen from America. And actually, when I was looking up The Killing, I believe The Killing was also Americanized. Because when I look up The Killing, I saw a description that said something, I'm pretty sure, based on the Danish TV show.
Yeah, I'd have to have a look. I have not been able to find the Danish one or the American one here in Turkey yet. There's all kinds of licensing rules here, but I'm on the lookout for it. So I'm checking my streaming services. If anyone in Istanbul has found it, let me know. And yeah, I just discovered like there's a channel here called Blue TV that has a lot of really classic, epic, heavy-hitting dramas like The Wire, The Sopranos, Succession, Empires of New York, a bunch of shows like that. Chernobyl is another one that's on there. So if it comes up, I'm going to keep my eye open and see if it's there. It might be on Prime too here. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would try IFC, right?
Yeah.
IFC is the International Film Channel. That's what it's called. Or look for that through Apple TV.
Yeah.
So back to our bonus episode here. So in The Killing, Hammerich says that there was a very big political storyline which went very well in The Killing. So she thinks that that's what sort of made the powers that be said yes to Borgen 5 years later, and also for the audience to have accepted this storyline because they had just seen it in The Killing. So the tagline of the show, she says, is, can you stay in power and remain yourself? And she says that's the DNA of the show, and I agree, right? That's the struggle that we see all of them facing. That's what we were talking about once offline, Amy, that like all of these characters struggle with power.
Yeah, exactly. And like power struggles, I mean, I just mentioned The Sopranos, which I'm watching again for the first time since it aired back
20 years ago, right?
20 years ago. Yeah. And I'd recently heard some other people talking about it. I'd heard some like, you know, different press coming out about it. People are talking about it again, because I think a lot of people watched it again over the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, everybody had time to watch like 86 episodes of an hour-long drama. So that, I mean, the core, I mean, Tony Soprano struggles with power, right? That's the whole premise of the show. How does he remain in power and like, you know, reduce his anxiety, which is kind of, it's such an interesting premise. And like good drama should have some kind of power struggle and conflict. There has to be conflict for there to be drama, right?
Yeah.
Says the literature teacher, right? So
Yeah.
you need that structure. You need what are the three types of conflict, students? You have person versus self, so the inner conflict, person versus person, right? Two people fighting about something. And it doesn't have to be a violent battle. It can be like an argument, it can be a relationship, it can be all these kind of other subtle things. And the third one is person versus the environment. So that can be not just, like the physical environment, your natural environment, but it can be a city, it can be your culture, it can be your community, it can be your workplace, whatever, the waste management company, whatever. So it can be the halls of power, like the parliament. So it's all of these things. So, and in every episode of Borgen, you can probably find examples of each of those three conflicts. And
Absolutely.
sometimes there's a resolution in the episode, and sometimes it carries over into other episodes. And that's something that I actually really appreciate, is when conflicts on drama TV shows carry over several episodes, because that's what would happen in real life. Like, things build up to a peak. Like in The Wire, the revenge plot that Omar has against Stringer and Avon is so long. It arches almost the whole series, right?
Well, not just that. I mean, it's an incredible look into the character's self.
Yes.
How do they think? How do they react? How do they plan? How do they respect people around them? Right? How big is their brain? Like, how creative are they? So it's actually really much more enticing when things carry over, because then it leaves the audience intrigued. Right?
That's right.
The trick of that, though, is to not make it too long so that your audience doesn't get tired
or lose interest, right?
Right. And we talked about this so many times on our podcast, that we love how tight and fast Borgen is. That it does carry over, but we never lose interest.
Yeah, exactly. And that's also good writing. Good writing does that. Good characterization does that. Good acting does that.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
I mean, when you think about it, I mean, okay, this is something that keeps coming up in my profession, is like the emergence of AI writing, right? And there's a writer's strike happening in Hollywood right now. It's a big problem. And people are saying, oh, writing is going to become obsolete. You can do everything with like artificial intelligence. You can get AI to write stuff. And it's like, can you though? Can you, like, you could probably come up with a formulaic plot for something that's very predictable and easy to do, but to do something really creative and like really personal and that humanizes characters, you can't do that.
No,
without
it's a horrible idea. And as someone who's over 40, like both of us are, that is incomprehensible to me. And I think it's horrible.
Yeah.
And I don't think it should be ever used in the school setting, or students should be using it at all. I just think it's horrible. So
they're going to, though, like, there's no getting around it.
There's no getting around it, and there's no way of stopping it, but it is a student's responsibility. Like, do you want to cheat and get a fake grade, or do you want to earn it and actually be proud of the work you're doing?
Oh, they want to cheat. They don't care.
They don't care. All right, so back to our bonus episode. So one of the rules that they had of the show is that the party names were all fictional.
Yes.
And that they would not refer to any politicians in real life in Denmark after 1982. Yeah. And I suppose the reason for that is that by 1982, any active politicians that were around back then were either now deceased, or they were retired for a very long time, so that there was no accusation of you have mirrored this against this person. And
no parallel. And like, I'm sure their legal department fixed that date in particular. I'm sure there was some reason behind that date. But like, oh, by the way, I'm now, you know what? Now a whole bunch of students are going to come at me for saying, oh, they want to cheat. And you know what? That's fine. Come at me. We'll discuss it.
One of the reasons for Borgen's success that they were talking about in this interview is that there's close and immediate access to the PM. and that
Yes.
this was a show that had finally sort of gone into the home of the PM, and that we can see her with her everyday problems like divorce or having kids with anxiety, which makes us relate very closely to her because it is so real. It is not watching someone standing at a podium trying to make a show out of that, but it is showing her real life struggles and vulnerability.
Yeah, a human, a
and
fully developed person with a life outside of her job.
Exactly. So as we said, time moves fast. There's always tight writing. A lot happens. Ethical dilemmas. The characters are not one-dimensional. And when we see these characters in the way they're presented, we feel nothing but sympathy to them, or anger, or joy, or celebration.
Yeah.
Right. We
And
talked about
sometimes
over our podcast how many times we had these characters where we don't like them. Like Huxenhaven is a prime example. Logison sometimes is an example where most of the time he's this horrible person, but then he'd, insert a few lines of intelligence or
or humanity. Yeah.
humanity. And it's just like, wait a second, that kind of makes me reflect on what I thought about this person before,
Yeah. And sometimes, even Casper, you feel those things about Casper, like
Yeah.
sometimes all of those things in one episode.
Yes. And I think it's excellent because it makes the audience feel and react. To me, that's the mark of a good show. And oftentimes, in other shows, our main protagonist is not likable.
Yeah.
I talked about on this podcast how much I like the show Killing Eve. I know there's fans of Killing Eve who listen to the show. And how can we sympathize with someone who is a killer? But then as the course of the episode goes through, you're just like, wait a second, I don't want anything bad to happen to her, or I want this opportunity to work out for her, or I'm rooting for her. And it's kind of like, well, what's wrong with me? This person's a murderer.
Yeah, the same with Tony Soprano, right? That's and a lot of the guys he works with, like a lot of the crew, like Paulie Walnuts, right? Like the character you love to hate, but you don't want anything to happen to him.
Yeah.
But they're kind of monsters, Yeah. They're corrupt criminals who steal people's money and break people's kneecaps and kill people and chop them up. Like, how is that nice? It's not nice.
No, it's not nice. Okay, so moving on to the topic of writing. So the question was,
one second. Before you do that, before you move on to the topic of writing, I just wanted to go backtrack a bit to the political party names. Okay. Now, within Denmark, I mean, the show uses fictional party names, but the New Democratic Party, Brigitte's new party, when she comes back after her stint as PM in the third season, is actually the name of a political party in Canada.
Yeah.
And so that was like, it was kind of, it's always funny to me. And like in my notes, it sometimes says NDP because that's the way we abbreviate it in Canada. And that was always kind of like, it felt very homey to me. It's like, oh, she's the leader of the NDP. I would totally vote for her.
Yeah, that was pretty funny to see her call her party the New Democratic Party. And that's a party that we've known in Canada since we were born. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, they've been around forever.
Exactly.
Forever.
So getting on to writing now, the question is about what is the writing process? And Camilla Hammerich says that it takes about 6 to 8 weeks to write one episode, and that she's also involved in this process as well as Adam Price.
Yeah.
And the producers are involved in it, and the main actors they bring in to be involved in it, and the directors they bring in at some point to be involved in it. And how Adam Price would compile the notes from the producers, the main directors, the actors, and they sort of all contribute to this process together, which is several drafts. And there is someone called a conceptual director, so directors that follow the episodes through to the end, and they make use of the visual concepts of the scenes, but to be more loyal with the writer, more loyal to the writer.
Right.
So I think it's great, and I think it's very important to have all these voices. I know nothing about writing for TV and how it should go, but as a layperson, it sounds like a really good idea to have all these thoughts from everyone.
Yeah, I mean, and like once an actor becomes kind of connected with their character, I mean, it would also depend on the actor too. Some actors want to be involved in that process, and some will just trust the writer. Um, it
Yeah.
depends on the person's approach to their acting. Like Edie Falco, for example, because like I said, I've been watching The Sopranos again, so now I'm looking stuff up about that show as well. And she said like she never gave a whole lot of thought to like Carmela's backstory. She just trusted what the writers gave her and like worked with it when it came up. But other actors will go like and make complete backstories for their characters, so they feel like they know exactly where that person's coming from.
Yeah.
So it might depend on the actor as well, but to have a team working together creates that cohesiveness. It gives it that flavor. It makes those characters more profound and like more distinct and more real. And
Yeah.
Adam Price is listed as the creator of Borgen, so I guess he probably came up with the concept and probably wrote a significant chunk of the script, or was involved in it, at least overseeing it, I would guess.
Yeah. So over to the next interview. This is the second interview we're talking about. It's called The Borgen Experience. This was a Q&A at the Nordicana 2015. Again, found on YouTube. This is again with Camilla Hammerich. She talks about how Casper Yule was such a cynical character that the writers decided to give him a past with an abusive storyline. And I thought it was like when we saw that episode where it goes into his past about child abuse, I was just so shocked. And I thought it was so great to give him more than one dimension, right? Because we've seen the other part of Casper before, this handsome, slick, charming ladies' man. But what goes on inside of that ladies' man, right? And I thought it was brilliant, actually. And listeners, if you're joining us for the first time, hello, welcome. Thank you for being here. We want to let you know that we actually did a bonus episode about Casper back in season 2. And we talked about this past of coming from this horrible background and how we don't see that in TV. We don't see men struggle with problems of sexual abuse, and we know it happens.
Yeah, exactly. It does. And I thought it was a really interesting take and a really interesting approach and a really interesting justification of like why Casper is such a liar and like so cagey about relationships
and can't trust.
Yeah, and can't trust, and why he invented a different identity for himself. Like he told Katrine this like, nonsense story about his dad being a military helicopter engineer or something like this, and that he was always working in France and that his parents were out of the country and all this kind of thing. And then we see his actual mom in this nursing home, and she's still apologizing, or, like is an apologist for her abusive husband and like in denial about what happened about it. And we when we find out that Casper actually stabbed his own father, the trauma, like that's a very interesting way to approach that character. And I thought it was a really, really cool, really interesting, and really unusual to definitely show that kind of like, abuse of a boy, because we see the abuse against girls storylines so often,
Yeah, we see it all over the place, all over the newspaper, all over, different films that we've seen or TV shows or documentaries, but we don't see that type of attention paid to men, and it's wrong. We should pay attention to the men who suffer in silence. The proportions are probably a lot smaller than the women who are victims of this. I think it's also important to point out that Casper, his name is not Casper, and that this is an identity that he chose for himself because he wanted to separate himself. His birth name is Kenneth.
Yeah.
And he changed his name, legally changed his name, and nobody knows his name is Kenneth except his mother.
Yeah.
And how he just lives his life like having this defense mechanism of not wanting to trust. And Katrine is an excellent partner.
Yes.
As a viewer of the show, I wish that he had opened up to her sooner and more, because that very tender scene where he runs out of her apartment. He had delivered a box up to her house, and she thought, oh, what is this, like a box of presents or a box of memories? And then she sees that it's a box of the memories that he's trying to hide, right?
Yeah.
So like the videotape of the news coverage, and he runs out probably ashamed, and she came out. And remember, Amy, I think it was your episode, you were talking about what a tender moment that was, how she just took him in his arms and just held him.
Yeah. Like she saw the wounded child,
Yeah.
It was very well done. I really liked that particular episode.
Very well done. It was very well done. And again, why we love the show so much. It's like complexity after complexity after complexity. Nothing is easy for these characters.
Yeah. And then also how later that trauma, that anxiety, that struggle with the PTSD and all the other issues that were caused by that abuse come into play when Casper has the opportunity to support Laura through her struggles as well. So it's it was an interesting thread, and it became kind of part of the fabric of the whole show in a deeper way. It wasn't just a one-off either. So kudos to the writers of Borgen. It's really, really well written. I mean, it's why it won so many awards. They got BAFTAs, they got awards all over Europe and as well. And like it's obviously it's
yes,
very well written. We wouldn't be talking about it.
Airs in 70 countries.
I mean, yeah.
It's there's no secret as to why. So the character of Hannah Holm, which is you and I's one of our absolute favorite characters ever, and as you say, Amy, we can watch a whole show about Hannah Holm.
I would totally.
Hannah Holm was the character was originally written for a man, but then they decided to change the gender and make it a woman, which I think works way better.
Yes.
We know the story of the man who leaves his wife and his child and goes abroad, and the big career that the man has. But what happens when it's a woman?
Yeah, exactly. And who becomes this like hard-edged, hard-hitting, like, seasoned journalist. It's so interesting. It's so interesting. And that actress is really good. She's so flinty, like I really like her. Like, and she just doesn't suffer fools either. Like she'll put Ulrich in his place. She'll like just tell people that they're stupid to their face, basically. Yeah. I wish I could get away with doing some of those things sometimes. Like she's so
authentic.
Yeah, authentic and authentic. Like tough.
She doesn't behave the way people want her to behave. And what I really like about her is this strong mentor that she is for Katrine.
Yes.
Even though they started off on the wrong foot.
Yeah.
I also have to respect Katrine for giving Hannah patience.
Yeah. And also
towards her story about, being an alcoholic.
Yeah. And also like, Katrine had to prove herself through her work too, to get in with Hannah as well. Like you can't just show up and be a rookie reporter that everybody likes because you look pretty as an anchor,
That's
like
right.
You actually have to do the work. You have to have the journalistic instincts and the, that drive to uncover the truth and like get to the bottom of things and really do your work for Hannah to respect you. And Katrine pulls it off. I mean, she consistently pulls it off.
Yeah.
And that's
one of the points you made, Amy, in our interiors bonus episode from season 1. You were the one that pointed out when we were recording that episode that she had a poster in her apartment of what is it? All the President's Men,
which is a film about the Woodward and Bernstein investigations of Watergate. I watched that. It's Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman, and it's if you want a really great journalism film, actually there's 3, and 2 of them are recent that I have watched, and these are kind of ones that I'm aware of. There's that one, Woodward and Bernstein, All the President's Men, which also has that classic 70s New Hollywood kind of element to it, which makes it really gritty and good. Spotlight, which was about exposing corruption in the Catholic Church. That was excellent. And more recently, She Said, which is about the two reporters at the New York Times who exposed the Harvey Weinstein story. That's a really good film.
I didn't see that one. I saw it advertised when I was in the theater to see something else. But when we see a poster like that hanging in Katrine's apartment, we know that her journalistic aspirations are beyond covering the flea market in the neighborhood. And to have a woman like Hannah Holm as your mentor is absolute gold.
Yeah, totally. You know? And I just enjoy it so much. And it's also nice to see a female actor, an actor who's a woman, who's not, 30.
Yeah.
Or younger in an important role. And it's, that's something else I appreciate about European television often is like, they're not afraid to cast people who are the age they're supposed to be. You don't find 30-year-olds playing, 50-year-olds, for example.
I love that. And as we talked about previously, they all don't have the same Hollywood surgeon or no surgeon at all, maybe. I don't know.
Seriously.
Like we see, you have characters like Hannah, you have characters like Bent, who are not, as you say, 30 years old, but they also, in all of them, they don't seem to have any overt enhancements.
Yeah.
So I feel very connected to them because they're like real people.
Yeah, exactly. Same. It's like people aren't cast just because they're pretty, even if they're the right age, like you can still cast pretty people who are the right age. Like, George Clooney is a silver fox now. Brad Pitt's heading that direction as well. I mean, he's in his mid-50s. Isn't that unbelievable? But like, it's so as you see these like leading men types, emphasis on men, can age into playing these like, handsome leadership, established roles, but you don't see women in those positions very often in cinema and television.
No, but I think it's changing. So what I observed recently, you have people like Michelle Yeoh, a woman of color, in the biggest Oscar-winning film of this year. You have a tremendous, absolutely supremely talented, one of my favorites, #crush alert, Viola Davis.
Yeah.
Amazing. She's probably over 55 now. You've got Jennifer Coolidge, who was just in The White Lotus, but who's had a career for over 20 years. She doesn't hide her age or her body.
Yeah, exactly.
She's not the typical body. And to me, I just think Jennifer Coolidge is so sexy because of her body.
Yeah,
I find her very attractive. Who's another one that won awards recently? There was a few.
By the way, Angela Bassett. Yeah.
#crush alert for Chantal. I mean, she is phenomenal. What exclamation mark? Like Amy's talking about, she's watching The Sopranos. So I was watching American Horror Story recently. Yep. She stars in about at least 6 seasons of that. Yep. And she is incredible to watch.
She's always been incredible.
She's incredible. And she's now like 64, which is, you talk about Brad Pitt being unbelievable to 55. I mean, 64.
64. Yeah, I know. Michelle Yeoh as well. And she, she doesn't just stand around looking pretty like Brad does. She does martial arts and she does all her own stuff.
Well, that's where she came from, right? She was Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yeah.
And she was a former Bond girl.
Yeah. And you know what she did before she did martial arts?
What?
Ballet.
Really?
Yes. I heard a very great interview with her on WTF, which is an actual professional podcast, not like ours. And if you want to listen to like good long form interviews with pretty much anybody in like film, television, comedy, writing, music, go listen to that. Go have a look and see if you can find the episodes, because that's really good. And that role in that interview, I found out that role in Everything Everywhere All at Once was also originally written for a man.
Yes, you said that.
Yeah, the two Daniels. And then they were like, maybe we should flip the script. And then they were trying to think of who they could get to do the part. And like Michelle Yeoh came up and they're like, it has to be her. So
I thought it was brilliant. I personally did not like the film, but I thought casting her was amazing. And talking about older women, I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah.
She won an award for that role or in that film as well. I think it's amazing.
Yes,
I'll tell you one quick story before our audience gets bored and leaves us because we're not talking about Borgen. But one thing I want to tell you, which I don't know if you know, because I'm a huge fan of American Horror Story. I love horror and Halloween and all that. Amy can attest to that. She's seen me go bananas every year for Halloween parties at Chantel's house. Anyways, talking about that, how, the creators and directors make a decision that sort of flips the table to what everyone else expects them to. That's how Jessica Lange got into American Horror Story. The creator of that, Ryan Murphy, who you and I know very well from, so many great shows that he's done, openly gay, writer, creator. He said that Jessica Lange is absolutely stunning as an actress, as a person, as a woman. And he purposely put her in. And she was in 4 seasons that I remember of American Horror Story, the first 4. And she was dynamite. And I just thought to myself, wow, like who would have cast anyone except Jessica Lange? But a lot of people would not have cast her because at the time she was over 60, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really refreshing to see these opportunities open up for middle-aged and older women.
Well, especially I'm a woman of color. I will say it is vital to have women of color and trans women of color, queer people. I'm also in the LGBT community. We don't see these roles very often. And Viola Davis was quoted by saying, the only thing that stops people is opportunity. So I wish people will create more opportunities for marginalized people.
Yeah, exactly. And another, referring again to WTF, is like the host of that is Mark Maron, a comedian. And he has often said and talked to like, a variety of quote unquote marginalized actors and actresses. He was in an episode of Reservation Dogs, talked to the creators of that show, Sterling Harjo. And he spoke about how when you offer an opportunity to people who aren't the mainstream go-to people, you're not actually taking anything away from anyone. You're only opening up opportunities for other people. And that's what real diversity is. And there's plenty enough to go around,
Well, not just that. I mean, people on the other side who are consuming this will say, that's me. That person looks like me.
Yeah.
I can identify with this character, I will say one thing before I bring it back to Borgen, because I'm going off topic.
Yeah, that's okay.
I want to say one thing, which is topical right now today, which is there is a film that is called Monica.
Yep.
People listening from New York, it is open in New York right now, and it opened in about 50 more cities yesterday. It stars trans woman actress Trace Lysette, Lysette, and she stars opposite what's her name? Patricia
Arquette?
Oh gosh, I'm blanking. I'm gonna have to look
Clarkson?
it up. Yes, Patricia Clarkson. So this is, and I loved Patricia Clarkson.
I love her in everything.
30 years ago, okay? But this film, Monica, is the first film that has a trans woman actress as the lead. And the story is about, she's estranged from her family because maybe they didn't accept her, so she was estranged. But when her mother is dying, she comes back to take care of the mother. Okay. Now tell me, who cannot relate to that, having an ill family member that you have to take care of? Whether this person is trans or not, does it matter? No. But in Venice, in the Venice Film Festival, they got an 11.5-minute standing ovation.
Oh, wow.
So I just want to say, when you cast minority people, good things happen. We want that,
Exactly. And that's something that I actually wish Borgen did a little bit more of, to be honest. But in season
Power and Glory,
we
have more diverse representation, and we will talk about it when we get there. And it was very good to see.
Yes, because it's set in Greenland, in case people didn't know that. But like, that's, dealing with indigenous communities is an issue, obviously very key to Danish politics.
Yeah.
And, what's the word
Very
I'm looking
topical,
for?
even here in Canada.
Yeah,
with indigenous
yeah. For
communities.
self-government, for autonomy, that's the word I was looking for autonomous government, like, and self-governing, and decolonization, and reparations, and all of these things are super topical, very topical, and
Mhm.
very important. Yeah, as Canadians, like as a non-Indigenous Canadian, which is me.
Mhm. And me.
Yeah, and it's like, it's very important to be aware of these people's stories, and it, like, there's so much to say and do about all of these things, and it's really interesting to see how this, these issues that hit these communities, A, in northern communities, and B, in northern Indigenous communities. And that was something that I really felt very familiar, Power and Glory, to me. And we'll be talking about that more when we get to that series.
And
in
then
our
the
recording.
other person they cast diverse, who was diverse, is Narcisa, who works
Yeah.
at TV1. So I think it's great to see a woman of color in the newsroom.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
we've never seen that before in TV1. So, all right. So everyone, we apologize. Amy and I just get so passionate.
Tangential.
We love talking about these things. We're good friends. So, we can talk forever and hours and days with each other. So thank you. Hopefully you're still here with us. And even if it's one person, thank you for staying. Okay. So getting back to the next episode, or the next interview now, this one is called, The Killing Paved the Way for Borgen Success. And this is a BBC interview that Tsitsi Babett Knudsen did in 2013. So she said that Knudsen says that Brigitte is not necessarily meant to be a role model for women and women politicians, that this is a particular role of someone discovering their way into politics and a PM trying to do her best. She describes Brigitte as an idealist. And when asked, what is the secret to Borgen's success, she acknowledges the gratitude. And with gratitude, she acknowledges the success of the killing and that how that paved the way for Borgen, which the interviewer calls the killing a treasure. The success was very unexpected, says Knudsen. It was a risky show to do. Borgen was risky. There was no international money. They were prepared to have lower ratings, which they suspected or foreshadowed but they'd never foreshadowed the international success. So that was a very beautiful surprise, that it, like we said here, 70 countries, 70. So the next interview now is called Nordicana 2014, Building Borgen. This is a Q&A that took place on February 1st, 2014. So they talk about how the production team fought hard to get the studio green light for the script. They said, okay, as long as you make a lot of the story about these people's private life, which Amy and I already talked about, offers rich, juicy writing and insight into these characters. The character Svendage Saltem, Amy, who's one of our favorite characters. And you've talked about this scene before, but they talked about it in this interview too, when Svendage has his shoes up on the table.
Yeah, his crummy shoes. Yeah.
So the head of the TV wanted it cut, but the production team fought to have it in. And they thought that it was the right decision because it added comedy, but it also gave us depth and insight into his character.
Yeah. And I like, he's another character that you kind of feel sorry for sometimes, almost a little bit, because he's like out of time and place, right? And he truly believes, like, this is the interesting thing and the horrible thing about him. He truly believes in all of the things that he says and does. Like, he's just as much of an idealist as Brigitte is, but he's on the opposite side of the coin, kind of thing.
Yes. And I feel personally as a viewer, I think, first of all, I think the actor is stellar. And
he's so good.
Must have been such like the character of Lagerson, like it must be such a juicy role to play these men that are just so out there and
Yeah.
horrible sometimes. But with Spendage, I feel sometimes his dramatism in the way he speaks sometimes loses the effect of what he's trying to say, because he's just at the top.
Yeah, it makes him a little bit more comedic, a little bit more like the butt of the joke, but also, I mean, that's again a writer's choice, right? Like it's sort of done on purpose. And like, let's face it, that's how he would that's how a lot of people would probably view those ideas anyway, right? It's like the okay boomer thing, it's like, okay, buddy, with your outdated ideas, like everybody else has moved on from 1950.
Which is interesting, which brings me to my next person to talk about, which is Benedicta, because Benedicta is also in his party, the Freedom Party, right? And she has a completely different spin on things. And in the last episode, we that Amy and I recorded, which is going to be out by the time we roll this bonus episode here, how she is part of the Freedom Party, but she offers a different perspective or different sort of the way she communicates her ideas is different than Sven.
Yeah,
she has like a fresher spin on things.
Yeah, she's more modern. She's thoroughly in the 21st century, and she's taking the ideology, a conservative ideology, and modernizing it. So she's not the butt of a joke. She's like a serious player, And as we have seen in particular, I mean, this show I know came out 10 years ago, but like, as we've seen post-COVID, in the post-COVID world, politics generally globally are swinging to the right in a lot of places. And that's, something that was almost prescient about Borgen, because these parties have taken hold, and like their ideology is weaving itself into the fabric of a lot of different societies. Personally, not being a right-winger, I think that's a bit of a problem. And also to go back to the interview you mentioned with Sitze Babbitt-Knudsen about how Brigitte's role isn't just as like a woman PM. It's not made to be particularly like feminist, right? It is made to be, this is the person in this position. This whole person is like, oh my God, they treated a woman like a human. They treated her character the same way they would have treated a male character. They have shown all her different aspects and like let her do her job and live her life, without making an issue out of it.
To me, Borgen was amazing, because it was none of this bullshit like, oh, she's got a new shade of lipstick, or oh, she's carrying a designer handbag by this designer, but not that designer. And oh, look at the length of her skirt. She's a woman over 40. She should be wearing her skirt over her knee. Like, nobody gives a crap.
I mean, and at least if, we don't get, those aren't the stories from the Express that we get to see. They leave those ones out. They only deal with politics, which I think is really great, actually.
But that's the way it should be. And that's what makes Borgen so ahead of its time, that even today, I mean, in Ontario, the province I live in, is there's some women politicians on a much lower level, like city councillors and stuff. They get heckled all over the news, and it's because they're a woman.
And I mean,
see that in Borgen.
And that's, those idiotic questions like, how do you handle a family and a career? Does anyone ever ask male politicians that? Does anyone ever ask male politicians about their childcare issues?
No,
I don't think so.
Or Trudeau, our prime minister, Justin Trudeau, are you not irresponsible for taking a job like this and traveling every week?
Yeah, you have 2 kids. Yeah, it's 3. There's 3 of them?
There's 3 of them.
Oh, I've been out of the country for a while. Yeah, I've been out of the country for a while.
Yeah. Anyways, let's bring it back to Borgen before everyone leaves us.
I don't think they're going to. I think I don't think our loyal listeners.
I'm joking. Anyways, so let's talk about Benedicta now. So Benedicta is played by the actress Maria Askave, and I'm probably butchering that. Every Nordic person has to forgive me. Her last name is Askehave. Anyway, so she has an intimate scene coming up. We haven't covered it yet, but we've all watched the series. She has an intimate scene with Ulrich, who's actually in real life her friend's husband.
Oh God.
And I thought that was hilarious.
How awkward.
How awkward. I know. It's just like, oh gosh, like Amy, if you had a husband and I had an intimate scene with him for work, I mean, I would just be like, wait a second, that's my friend's husband. I can't do that.
Oh, that'd be
anyway,
so funny.
she made a joke in the interview to say something like, at least she got paid for it and her friend didn't.
Yeah, seriously.
So anyway, so on to another point now. The first 2 series of Borgen were planned for 4 years. And the 3rd series almost didn't happen. But when it did happen, it opened up 2.5 years later from where we last left off. And sorry, Cici Babak-Knudsen thought it was fascinating to see Brigitte not as the PM, but has an interesting storyline within herself. Because I think this is very true that when a famous person goes out of the spotlight, what happens to them? Where are they working? Are they working? What are they doing? Where are they living? So I thought that was very sort of intriguing for the audience, you know. So in another question, what was the most controversial? So this is the Nordicana interview, not the Cici Babak-Knudsen. So this is many of the cast members were there. So to the question, what was the most controversial episode? Adam Price says to him personally, it was the episode about the pigs, which was my episode 4, which we've already aired here. And then the prostitution episode, which is Amy's episode, which by the time this comes out, it would air as well. That's episode 5. And he says that in real life, the real Danish parliament actually came up with a similar idea or solution to what Brigitte proposed in the fictional world in episode 5.
Oh, for the prostitution issue?
For the prostitution issue.
Yeah, it makes sense, actually. And in the show, that her idea is rejected, actually, which is kind of interesting. But it's nice to hear that they did that in real life. I mean, that's the thing with prostitution and sex work, and like sex work. It should be like, it's never going to go away. It's never going to go away. If you ban it, it just goes underground, like, you know, everything else that involves human vices, gambling, drugs, drinking, sex work, all of these things. If you ban them, people will find a way to acquire them or do them anyway.
Yeah.
So if you keep it legal and you legislate it and you regulate it and you provide benefits for the workers and all of the things that are involved with a job, because it is a job, it is labor, then it's a win-win for everybody. Yeah, everybody is protected and much safer.
As we talked about in that episode, if some listeners missed it, these prostitutes, sex workers, they're paying taxes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
they're paying taxes, and Amy and I are both pro sex work, and I personally think it is a service, just like getting a massage, just like going to physiotherapy.
Yeah.
You know, what is the shame in it? There are many people, just ask me. I'm sometimes doing online dating. Like, I see
everybody does online dating. Nobody
ads.
I
wish I didn't have to. If any,
I know, but no, like, how do you even meet people anymore? Almost everybody does online dating.
I know. So listen to this. So online dating. So I'm on a few apps, right? And
we're not going to say which ones, people. Calm down.
That's right. That's right. Because we're not advertising for them. Anyhow, most of these profiles, Amy, they talk about EMN. No, ethically
ethical non-monogamy.
Ethically non-monogamous. I'm poly. I have a primary partner. I'm looking for a secondary or tertiary partner. And it's just like, really, like, for me, I'm not attracted to those ads. I'm not interested in that. But my point to say that is some people in their relationships have an arrangement.
Yeah, they do.
And if you are looking to have another lover, or you're a single person who's finding it hard to meet someone, maybe you want to find a date or a hookup.
Yeah. And
right?
why not? Why not? What's the problem with that?
Why not? And we talked
And
about this in the last episode, how I watched that film that Isabelle Huppert starred in. I think it's called The Special Treatment,
yes.
where we see her putting as much effort into her job. She's preparing costumes and scenarios and whatever, as her therapist does prepare for his patients that he takes in. What's the difference? It's a service to money.
Yeah, exactly. It is a job. It is labor, right? And also, like, it eliminates that whole like question of, do you call the person? Do they call you? Do you have to stay for breakfast? If you don't, like,
it's perfect.
All of that awkward stuff that can come up in a hookup situation is just eliminated. Like, you don't have to deal with all that crap.
It's perfect, Amy. So you always talk about your cat in the background, but when you were in Toronto, remember I was house sitting and cat sitting, and you came over.
Yes,
you were playing with the cats, right? Betsy and Barkley. Anyways, I work for that woman. Okay, I get paid for a service, which is to stay at her house, take care of her cats, take the trash out, whatever. Right?
Yep.
She is not asking her friend to do it. Or if she had a partner, she's not asking her partner to do it, because it gets complicated.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
What you just said, you pay and you leave. You pay, you work, I get my money, I leave. And there is no complication whatsoever. It is miraculous.
Yes. And I've, like, as far as pet sitters go, I've had people stay who are friends and, had fine times with them. I've had people who are friends of friends stay at my house, but to pay someone and get them to do it, it's like, it's having a friend, like, from a kitty care point of view, it's kind of nice because the person knows your cats and stuff. But if someone's not available, it's nice to be able to hire someone. Like, people have jobs for a reason,
But there's also no strings attached. It's not like,
yeah, exactly.
Now I owe Amy a favor. I feel so bad.
Yes.
She had to travel an extra half an hour to go to her work every day. She's so nice to me. What am I going to do? No, why don't I just pay and get it done? The end.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways, let's bring it back to Borgen. The question is, why Jeremy? Okay. Price answers, he says they did it purposely to make the love interest outside of Denmark, because who would want to date, or who would date the former PM of Denmark? Good point. Right. And so the question now to follow up to that is, why not Philip? And Price says that Philip abandoned her, and it would be way too easy to put them back together, and it wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, it would be way too easy. It would be so trite. It would be so melodrama and like soapish. So I think it's much more realistic that once you split with your husband, you stay split.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah.
I mean, we're not, it's not Elizabeth Taylor, she went back to the same guy twice, I think. But like, after cycling through a few more, mind you. So like, a lot of, that's not a realistic storyline. And it would be very difficult for Brigitte to date in Denmark. And also, like, what's she going to do? Go on the apps? I don't think so.
I didn't see her on the apps when I was
no, probably
I'm not looking in Copenhagen, though. Anyone in Copenhagen, I'm not looking in your pool, don't worry.
Yeah, it's a little hell of a commute there.
It's true. Like, who's going to date the PM? Where does she find someone? Is she going to go on, some dating site? Of course not. She's going to be recognized everywhere she goes. And we talked about this already, which is, he's not from Denmark. He doesn't know who she is and the scandals, or how big she is, or what.
Yeah. He knows, but
about that, it should be about, oh gosh, I genuinely like you,
Yeah. And I mean, of course he knows that she would, I just hit my mic, sorry. He knows that she was the former PM. He knows her position. He knows that she's known in Denmark, but he's outside of that circle, outside of that community. So he doesn't know the details of it. So it would be kind of better, but they're like peers, they're professional equals. She's not dating him while she is prime minister.
I think it would be great, like, if I were her, to have a person not know who I am, because it doesn't matter who I was or who I am as a professional. I want you to like me as a person.
Exactly.
And actually, it's more genuine if you don't know who I am.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Because it means that, oh, maybe you really like me, and you're not looking for some political, hookup, like a alignment with someone else. Okay, so the next question now, which kind of made me laugh, is the moderator asks, what would it take to do a Borgen season 4? And this question was asked 10 years ago. And Cici Baba Knudsen says they should do it in 10 years. And her and Adam Price laugh. And this interview was aired in 2013.
Oh, there
And
you
look
go.
at that. In 2022, we have Power and Glory. So another comment. This was a strong feminist role in many countries in the world, including Canada. This would be too much for the people to handle. And in my opinion, this is what makes Borgen brilliant, and then it was a show about not about the feminist agenda. It was just a story about the PM doing her job, and it actually normalizes it. And I say also not to forget about the two very strong leads that we had in season 1 to 3, which was also beside Brigitte, Katrine and Han. So we've already covered that and talked about that, why we think that is why we think it's the mark of the success of the show, one of the reasons. Price also pointed out when Denmark got their first prime minister, people in the media focused on her expensive handbag in real life, the real life female PM. Price says that that if a male politician or male prime minister rather had an expensive bag, no one would care.
Nobody would even notice.
No one would notice. They'd be like, oh, the big important man is standing at the mic with a big important announcement. They're not looking at, oh, why is your shirt not ironed? And what color is that tie? And why do you think that it matches your jacket? It doesn't, like.
Yeah, and like how expensive is the watch you're wearing? Like nobody
nobody notices. So yeah, that was my next point, to say that Borgen was so ahead of its time, because none of this was never a consideration spent or wasted introducing the audience to a woman and trying to make them feel comfortable with a woman. The writers didn't care if you accepted it. We're doing it, and I think that is badass, and that is amazing. Yeah, okay. So let me just bring it over to the next point, which is that was the last interview that we covered. Just a couple trivias for you. So a note about the actress who plays Benedicta. As we said, her name is Maria Askave or Askave. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Askehave.
Askava.
So on the internet, it says that her occupation is an actress and a singer. And I want to tell you, Amy, so through the Borgen the Borgen podcast Instagram account, we follow her. And so I was looking up some of her posts, and I saw her with a clip she posted of herself singing. And I thought it was really cool, because I thought she did a really good job, and she sounded really sultry, and she reminded me a little bit of Nora Jones. And I was thinking to myself, oh, I wish she posts more singing videos, because I think she's really good. And I was thinking, Amy, we should, if we were in Copenhagen, we can go to a place like this, and maybe she'd be singing, and we can just relax with a drink.
That would be so nice. I would go to one of her
concerts.
Yeah, I would go to a concert for sure.
So the other thing about her is that she's probably best known for her role as Ree Skovgaard in The Killing, the Danish TV series. Which is actually, as we said, at the top of my queue to watch. And it also stars Sophie Grabol, Grabol, who had a very small part in Gentleman Jack, a series that I love. So she has one scene with Saran Jones, who's the lead character who plays Ann Lister in that series. And the last trivia I have for you is that the woman who plays Pernille from the Labour Party is played by Petrine, Petrine Agger, Agger. And in real life, she's married to Soren Malling, who plays Torben on Borgen.
Oh, no way. Oh, yeah. That's so funny.
So, and reading about them, they also both play, Petrine Agger and Soren Malling, they both play in The Killing, as well as the character, the person who played Raoul, who's Lars Mikkelsen. He was the economics expert that was in Brigitte's Party. So yeah, so there's lots of familiar faces for me when I get to The Killing, which I'm going to get to at some point. And if I have some good conversation topics out of that, Amy, I'll let you know. Maybe other listeners would enjoy it, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that watch Borgen that have already seen The Killing, especially those listeners who are, living in European countries.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah.
And I also discovered in my little Adam Price search that I did today, his mother's name is Brigitte,
That's
which
cool.
I thought was kind of nice. Coincidence? I don't know.
Maybe a
Maybe.
coincidence.
Maybe it was a tribute to her, you know?
Well, the other person whose name is Brigitte is the woman who plays Katrine.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Brigitte Sorensen is her name.
Yep.
And
Yep.
she actually crossed over and played in some North American films.
Yes, that's right. Yep, I've seen her. I'm so surprised when she speaks English in Borgen. I'm always like, whoa, you know, like it's like, wait a second.
No,
Or
I
when
would say, okay, so there's a lot of North American people who are just like, I can't read subtitles. I just can't. It just goes too fast. I can't deal with it. I love subtitles, you know, and of course I love film. I go to film festivals. I see a lot of foreign film. The Inside Out LGBT Film Festival is starting in 6 days. I already have all my films. I'm seeing like 12 films. And I
Nice.
actually prefer to see the international ones because those ones may not get a release to North America. So I'm always,
Yes.
anyway, so I love the subtitles. What I cannot stand is the voice dub.
I hate dubbing.
Hate dubbing, okay? But I also get so excited when I'm watching a show or a film in a foreign language and then all of a sudden they speak English. It's just like,
Yeah,
wait
it's
second,
such a double take.
It
It's
sounds
like
a
the
different person.
Yeah, the character switches. And I like, I know a lot of people can't handle subtitles. I am not one of those persons. My whole entire life is in subtitles.
Yeah, that's right, because
Like,
you're an English speaking person living in Turkey.
Yeah, I'm an English speaking person living in Turkey. And like lately, you know, I've been quite lazy about learning Turkish regardless. And I feel like my Turkish is getting worse, actually. But yeah, I mean, it's very normal for me to not understand what people are saying to me all the time, or not 100% anyway. And yeah, so it's not a big deal for me to watch a film in like, you know, Mandarin or Norwegian or, you know, Scottish.
I prefer it
because Scottish English.
it's their mother tongue. It's their first language. It's how they express themselves. When they act, when they say those words have meaning through their body language and facial expressions.
Yes, and you're getting
dub.
Yeah, you're getting the actor's voice as well, and the actor's interpretation of the character that they're playing, not somebody else's interpretation of the words that have been translated. Like, there's too many filters for me.
Yeah.
For dubbing. And the only way I can accept dubbing kind of is in animation, but even then I prefer subtitles. Like Miyazaki films, for example, like Japanese anime films. I prefer to listen to them in their original Japanese with subtitles. That's just the way it is.
Oh, I agree. You know? I agree. It's just horrible. So yeah, I don't have anything else for this episode. I hope listeners enjoyed it. We enjoyed putting the show together because, like I said, I think it's important to pay respect and also know more about the history behind the show we all love so much. And like I said, these are all available online. There wasn't a lot of articles that I read, even though we're going to call this show Articles and Interviews. When we get to Power and Glory, we will do an episode like this called Articles and Interviews, and we will pull articles up because so many articles were written last year when Power and Glory. So there's a lot of material out there to read.
Definitely.
And we will also plug our friend Richard Fernandez, who blogs about Borgen, has been doing it forever, at cafethinking.com. That's his website where you can read all sorts of material about Borgen.
Seriously, sometimes I use Richard's blogs as a reference for me to help me form my ideas when it's my turn to do an episode, like to get another perspective on it. And like, I just a shout out, Richard. We've had some email communications, and we appreciate you.
Yeah, so cafethinking.com, and I'm on his site now. There's actually like a tab you can just click on, and it'll bring you to everything Borgen. So everyone should check it out. All right, Amy, if there's nothing else to say.
Nothing else to say.
Nothing else.
We
to
said
say.
a lot about a lot of things.
I hope you enjoyed being with us, listeners. We love talking to each other and talking about Borgen, and we'd like your input too. If you want to get in touch with us, you can. So we have 2 more bonus episodes coming up for you, which we have not recorded yet. We're still working on them. Amy, do you want to say what those are?
Yeah, there's an episode about the men of Borgen, and
Yeah, so
there's
6 men we're
Yeah.
going to profile, and then we're going to have our final bonus episode about Katrine and Brigitte. We want to compare and contrast or profile each of them, how they were in season 1 and 2 versus how we see them in 3.
Yeah, that
And
story arc.
Yeah, we
Character
will continue
developments.
recapping the series. We've got a few more of those to record as well, so please stick around. All right, so Amy, shall I?
Yes, you can take
All right.
us out.
Take us out. All right. So we'd like to thank our listeners for joining us on this episode. You can check us out on our website, theborgenpodcast.com, where all of our podcast episodes are archived, and you can learn more information about us and the show. We'd like to thank our good friend Garth Jensen for providing our intro and outro music. Thank you very much, Garth. And we'd like to mention that Garth has launched a YouTube channel called Garth's Pop Culture O. And lastly, don't forget to check us out on all social media platforms. We are there and we'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to connect with us and share what's on your mind by using the hashtag #TheBorgenPodcast or by sending us an email or voice memo at theborgenpodcast@gmail.com.